So welcome again to Getting Started with Story Maps. There will be two presenters in the webinar today. First, myself, Shane Brott from UNH Cooperative Extension, and also Paula K. Lazarus from St. John's University. I will begin the webinar. We'll go back to Paul. We'll go to Paula for a while, and then it'll shift back over to me. Now, we're going to talk about ArcGIS Online a bit. We're going to talk about story maps. Know that this is just scratching the surface of what's possible, but this is our attempt to try to get people to understand what the basics are, and maybe at least to get excited about what it is that you could do with story maps. There's plans, and I'll talk a little bit about this at the end, to do a lot more with story maps and ArcGIS Online. And of course, there are lots of other resources out there about how you can do this, but we really feel that story maps are an incredibly useful and interesting way to use online maps to really tell stories, but also communicate points. So hopefully the goal of this webinar will be that you'll come away from this thinking and being excited about what you could possibly do with story maps in your work or in your life. So very briefly, oops, that's not what I want to do. Exit this, go over to here. So ArcGIS Online is a part of ArcGIS, the ArcGIS platform, which is produced by a company called Esri. Now, Esri is probably the biggest mapping company in the world, and certainly it's one of the more dominant mapping companies in the United States. They were known for a long time for primarily producing their desktop software, which was called ArcInfo and then ArcView, and now ArcGIS for desktop. But a few years ago, they started thinking about how they could work in the online space. How do we get people to take maps from their computers, get them, share them, collaborate, and make interesting and engaging interactive maps? Now, in the past, let's say 6, 7 years ago, in order to do this would take a tremendous amount of technical expertise, money, time, and now what you're able to do with this is pretty remarkable. And we think that one of the most exciting things you can do are story maps. But just to give you a little feeling for ArcGIS Online before we start, if you go to arcgis.com, I mean, obviously don't go now necessarily, but if you go to arcgis.com, there's a lot of information, and these websites have been updated. I see them updated quite a bit to show you sort of what the whole idea behind ArcGIS and sort of this idea of a platform where you have desktop computer, you have online maps, you have mobile data collection, all of this. But when you look at the very bottom of this page in these features at a glance, what we're really talking about are online maps that you can create yourself, that you can use from things that are already online, which you then can share with people. I just want to say one quick thing. If you're interested in trying this out, if you already have an account, then you already know this. But if you go to arcgis.com and click on Sign In, it'll bring you to a page that looks like this. Just want to caution that it's spelled out here, but if you're not sure what you're doing, you may not notice the difference. This Try ArcGIS is going to get you a subscription account. Now, you do get to try ArcGIS Online subscription account for a certain amount of time free, but then that account you will have to pay for to use. Down here, they have an option for creating a public account, which is free and is free forever, as far as they've said so far. So if you want to try out ArcGIS Online, all the things we're talking about today with story maps and a lot of the really cool things you can do, you can just do with a public account. So my suggestion would be start there with a public account. One of the things you can do with a subscription is you can shield data a little more appropriately. You can set certain settings so that people can't see your data or your maps. With a public account, you can't do that. So keep in mind, any sort of mapping you're going to do for the public account, if you make any of your maps or layers available, everybody is going to see or be able to see all of them. So just keep that in mind. But if you haven't started with ArcGIS Online yet, I would suggest you do that and create a public account. Now, there's very briefly, there's a lot of different things that you can do, including just making some simple online maps. If you notice, when I pull open this section and click on Map, you have the ability to change a bunch of different and select from a series of different base maps. There's a whole range of different base maps you can select. Something I really like what they're doing is something called canvas, or a light gray or a dark canvas. because sometimes putting your data on top of a map, all of the background of the map gets very confusing and makes you lose track of the data that you're interested in. So that's another option they've come up with. But you can add data from a whole bunch of different sources. Now, if you search for layers, you can look in a wide variety of things, and the options you see here will depend on how you're logged in. But if you just start for looking for ArcGIS Online, you can find lots of different places that data are already posted. So if you have your own data, that's great, but even if you don't, you can search for them. And I'm in Rhode Island right now, and I know that the Rhode Island Geographic Information System Office, or RIGIS, has posted a whole bunch of different data layers. So if you want to look at surface waters, you can bring those in. If you want to look at, let's say, conservation lands, you can bring those in. There's lots of different things that you can add, both from online and if you look here when it says add, you can add data from your own computer. So if you have shape files or if you have data from a GPS, you can add them in as well. So this is really a way to make a good looking online map with data from other places or data from your own location or for your own use, things that you've developed yourself. So it offers a pretty spectacular combination of data layers that are ready-made and things that you can add yourself in a whole bunch of different formats. And this goes both for the subscription account and for that public option that's free. But to me, the most interesting thing about this is not that you can just make this map, but the way that you can share it with people and you can use it to display data. So if I go ahead and share it, I'm just going to say demo story map and give it some tags quickly. The interesting thing, and what I think sets ArcGIS Online apart from a lot of other online mapping platforms, is that you can share information, and then you can either embed it in your website, which a lot of others can do, but you can also do something called make a web application. And we're not going to go into this in great detail, other than to, or I'm not to, other than to say there's a lot of different options that they have, which lets you take the map that you created and display it in a more engaging, interactive, and professional way. And as we get to the end here, you can see that some of the options they have are story maps. Now, when they first started, there were no story maps. And then after they started with story maps, there was one option. But what you can see is that there's actually now 5 different options of taking your data and displaying it in what we call this story map format. So this is really what, to me, is the most interesting and engaging use of ArcGIS Online. Not just your data, not just the data that other people have, but your ability to construct a map and then publish it out in this very interactive, engaging format that lets you communicate your point much more effectively and perhaps at the same time tell a story. So for more on what story maps look like and how they work, I'm going to go ahead and shift over to Paula. See if we can do this. Change presenter. Okay.
Okay, hopefully this is going to work. Am I here? Can folks hear me? Jane, can you let me?
Yeah, but I don't see your screen yet. Now we do. Okay.
Okay. Hello, everyone. I'm Paula Lazarus. As Shane has said, I'm from St. John's University. There are quite a number of those. I'm at the basketball St. John's, the one located in Queens, New York. So here we are on the gallery page for story maps, right? If we were just to come to the main story map page, it would look something like this. So I've clicked on gallery because I wanted to give you an immediate idea of some of the choices that you have. What we'll look at in a little while will be some of those options that Shane just displayed for you, those 5 maps. But you'll note here that they have actually grouped the types of maps you can make into styles, so to speak. A basic one, a map journal, series of bulleted or side accordion points, map tours, playlists of different things, and comparison maps, either using a spyglass where you have an overlay of mapping, you can see old and new, or side-by-side layers. Some of these maps, you must download the app and fiddle with it yourself, and then you need to place it on a public server for it to be viewed, and others are accessible straight through ArcGIS Online, which is what we're going to experiment with and look a little bit at today. But just to give you an idea of what kinds of things are already out there, Esri has grouped already existing maps made by a wide variety of different groups into topic areas. And so if we were looking at nature and the environment, we might look at this map. This is a, maybe I'll close this and get that out of the way. That's maybe more helpful. Here we're looking at a journal format story map. It comes to a base map of the sort that Shane was just showing you. And whatever map you save to begin with is the opening map of your journal. You can zoom in and out here to this map. And when you ever want to go back to where it started, you click home. You then click through or scroll through the different pages of this story map. You can add images, as you see here, or on the sidebar itself, comparative images that they have here. Or if I skip down a little farther here, here is a second map that they've saved, where they've added lines to show the shrinking of the glacier itself. And if I am not quite sure where this is in the world, even though there's an overview map, I can zoom out and out and out until I get a sense of where I am in the world. You can also, interestingly, add videos here, whether on the sidebar. So in this case, you're going to see the retreating of this glacier in a time-lapse kind of image. Or you can be taken out to links to a variety of different websites. And then you can see here they have additional reading. Another example, this time a more, let's say, digital humanities type example. Here we have a map tour setup, and we have a map made about Charles Darwin's voyage. So it's quite simple. It's a series of points everywhere that he traveled, and very good for them. They've put in references to where their images and things have come from. And so I can either click through it slowly in the way they've added these images to the places and when he arrived there, or I can click below and it will take me directly to wherever I've chosen to go, and I could go back in any way that I wanted. So these are two different ways. People use the map tour very often to show highlights of places in a walking tour of their community, but I've also seen a map tour used by a community to highlight all the individual people in the administration, and each one of those specific spots are the individual's home web page, something to that effect. So if you're going to make a web map, I'm going to use an example here. I'm an archaeologist by profession, and I work in southern Italy in a place called Bova, or Bova Marina, which is at the very end of Italy, opposite Sicily. And so here I'm just in a plain ArcGIS map of the sort that Shane was illustrating previously. I've put a base map here, a satellite imagery base map, and using the Add Map Notes tool, I've made a polygon that simply illustrates the area that was under the control of this community in the early 1800s, which is the period that I was studying for my research. For any starting point in a story map, you must have an initial map. You may then link together multiple maps. And in fact, if you had many, many layers on this map, they would all show up at once, and it would make your story map kind of difficult to work through. So if you have a complicated series of related ideas, what you really want to do is to make one map with each layer, with each thing you're trying to show, save them all individually, and then link them all together to make your story. So in this case, this is my starting map. I've saved it already. I'm going to go to Share. I've made it public. and I'm going to click on Make a Web Application. Since Shane already showed you much of this, I'll only say briefly that many of these other apps help you to do different kinds of analytical things with your base map. So this is a particularly useful one. By putting in 2 pins across an area, it will create an elevation for you on the fly. So that's a particularly nice one. But we're going to go straight to the end here, and you have these different short story map choices, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. We've looked at journal and tour. You have a chance to preview it to make sure that's kind of what you want to look like, and then click Publish. And when you publish, it will save your map as an application. We're going to come out of this. And you can then come to your content, where you will see your newly made map, and you can click on Configure App to move forward in customizing the map that you've made. While that's loading, whatever extent you are at here, that will be the extent that you will see on the map when you pull it into your story map. So if you decide that you want to zoom in and out of different areas, if you bookmark them and save each bookmark as a different map, you can add them later as different levels. So here we are. It now says Builder. That's how I know the map is in the mode for me to edit it. I can come up to Settings and choose a format for my layout. I can choose how much of my side panel I want it to be, to medium, small, large, whatever my choices are. I can change color schemes or types, fonts, and my header. Let's say if I wanted to put my school logo here instead of the Esri logo, I could do that. Next, I can come to the pencil and begin to edit. So this is just plain editing toolbars like you would see anywhere. I can change the background, I can color my text, and I can change the font size how I want. So you'll see here there are 2 tabs. The main stage, which is what's on my right here, what's in the background. And so where it says Web Map, I will then browse either to my map or to ArcGIS Online Map and pull it in as my base map, right? So I've chosen this as my base map. I can choose to have an overview map or a legend, or not to have them included in my map. And then I can go to my side panel and decide what it is I want to have appear on the side here. Note that I can add video. I can add video actions to the main stage as well. I'm going to cancel this so I'm not writing over what I have here. So as I go through my map, you can see the next thing I have in here is not a web map. In fact, it's a map that was made in ArcGIS Desktop, exported as an image, as a map, and then uploaded here because I could do different kinds of things that I could not do in ArcGIS Online for this study area. I can also have links embedded here that take me to the website, for example, for this project. Or, as you can see here, I can embed images. In this case, I've embedded an image of the documents that were used for this particular research project. There are many different kinds of images here. Let's see, I'll go quickly through some of them. So I can just put pictures here, or I can put pictures on my sidebar and I can scroll just through my sidebar. You can go to a web page and see what it looks like today, maybe less important. And of course, I can put those web maps from ArcGIS Desktop either in my sidebar or here on the main stage, depending on what I'm trying to talk about or what my point happens to be. If I come down here, wait, I wanted rural houses, not artifacts. So here I have yet another base map that I've put here, right? So I came in here. On my main stage, I have pointed to this particular base map, but I could also put an image or a video here, right? Or another web page. And in my side panel, I've embedded these links that are telling me that what I have placed here, I want to have appear in the main stage. So that looks like this. I want an example of rural houses. Here, if I bring down my legend, we can see how many houses by color, right? It's just by classification by quantity. And so I can add a picture or another picture, and then it will send me back to my original map. If I have data in here, it will come up in my pop-up if I want to be showing that, and I should have actually on this original map turned off all of this other stuff that's not of use and only left the information, for example, the name of the place and the quantity of things that are in it, 7. But work in progress, I think is what we could say here. If you want to add a new piece to this, you click on Add Section, and then you will give it a name. You'll give the section title, whatever it is you want to call it. You will choose what you're going to embed within here, whether you want those extras, and then you will save it. And if you're working with the things that happen to be easy on your mind, but they're not necessarily the order you want them in later, you can come here and drag these right in their position and sort them differently over time. Now, this is the map journal format. Each one of those maps has its own format. If we were looking at that map tour format, you would have a series of add pictures. You would drag in those pictures, or you would put the point on the map, and it would give you a pop-up and say, what do you want to put in this particular pop-up? And then you would add an image, or you would add a map, or whatever you wanted to add there. So I think that is, you will then have to save it, right? And I think it's important to realize that for each thing that you do, once you've made your map, the original data, the maps from ArcGIS Online that are in the back, you can update them, and when you save them, they automatically update your story map. You do not have to go back each time you have new data or make a change to these maps. Of course, if you want to change your images, yes, then of course you have to come to the story map to change these images. But to any of the web maps that you point to, if you update them in ArcGIS Online, they automatically update your web map. So basic things to remember here, right? All map layers and images, even if they're your own images, must be public and stored in a public place. So that means that your images need to be on a publicly accessible server or in Picasa or Facebook or something of that nature. Remember that you need to do more than just edit. You need to save and publish, because if you just save it without publishing, you will see your changes, but your public will not. It is best practice to put credits for any images that are not yours personally. And in many cases, especially if you've taken photographs and etchings and things of that sort of historical nature, but even current photographs or art photographs, put a link to the place that they came from. You will make the owner of those images, the creator of them, very happy. And the last part I just started with, which is that all personal images need to be stored on a publicly accessible server. That would also be true for any web maps that you made in desktop, need to be uploaded or placed somewhere where they're publicly accessible. And with that, I think we can turn things back over to Shane and open the floor for questions.
Okay, so thank you very much, Paula. Remember, folks, if you want to ask any questions, you can go ahead and in that questions section or in the chat section, you can go ahead and put things in. Make sure that they're sent to be visible either to everyone or at least to me. So a couple of things. This was supposed to be a very quick overview, and it was quick, of the different types of things that you can do in ArcGIS Online and with story maps, but obviously there's no way that you would necessarily go from never having used it before all the way to being able to use it after just looking at the things that we've showed you today. We hope that this was more sort of inspirational and also that gave you an idea of the types of things that you could do. But one of the things that we want to let you know is there are plenty of resources, including things we're going to do in the future, but other resources that are out there that will help you if you're interested in really learning how to use story maps further. So the first three I have here, and I will post all of this information on the learn.extension.org page, is that Esri does a very good job of supplying information in a variety of places. So if you are a teacher, either a K through 12 or higher ed, you can go to Esri's T3G Institute, which is Teachers Teaching Teachers GIS. If you go to that page, there's more information on it. And of course, they spend a lot of time talking about ArcGIS Online Story Maps. Also, I find that their K through 12 staff does a lot when it comes to coming up with ideas and sharing ideas about story maps. And if you go to that link, which is basically going to Esri's blogs and then searching for story maps, you'll see a lot of entries. The other thing, of course, is if you do go to the Esri user conference, and there is also an education user conference, there's a lot of emphasis on ArcGIS Online sharing data and on story maps. A few things here. If you're in New England and or New York, so New England plus New York, the Northeast Arc Users Group has both a general conference one day in the spring and then several days in the fall, and there's also an Educators Day conference related to that. The ones coming up this year are in Burlington in early November, Burlington, Vermont. So that's a place to get some support. If you're in New Hampshire and you're a teacher, we have our New Hampshire Educational GIS Partnership, which helps K through 12 teachers in New Hampshire learn how to use ArcGIS Online. And there's two e-extension related resources. Map Syst, which is the geospatial technology group. This webinar is offered under the collaboration between Paul and myself through Map Syst. And also there's a new innovation hub on mapping that's coming in e-extension, which is very much related to Map Syst. And there should be details provided soon about that. Again, all of these are just ways you can find out more information and also places that you should be able to go to get help. Now, let me see. Again, yeah. Can I explain more about mapping all layers in images as public?
Sure. Do you want me to answer that?
Yeah, go ahead.
Hi. So when you're in, and I don't have my screen here, but Shane, if you can bring up your, just a plain map you were making for everyone, that sample that you had, or you want it made my screen, I can do it on my screen. If you are here in ArcGIS.com, and I've made this particular map, then I might not want to have added on here the map that I just showed you with the rural houses on it, for example, because everything would show at once, and I wouldn't be able to break down my story, so to speak, and focus on something specific, or I would not be able to zoom in at the time to show you just what is in whatever area I happen to zoom in on right here. So in that case, I would want to make this map public by sharing it and making it public. But I would also want to, let me go back here. Let's see if I can pull this up here without it taking too long and being too difficult. So the map that we were just looking at, here is the mapping application, but here is the layer that says rural houses. So this also has to be, let me get this out of your way, or everyone's way. So you'll see that they have to be public, shared with everyone. So if I went back another page here, and I had the distribution of oak trees where I'm working, it's another layer, it's public, and so forth and so on. If I was looking for land use, okay, that also had to be public. Because if I don't, when I open my map here, I will get a blank, or I will be sent directly to the sign-in screen. And whoever's ever trying to use my map will be asked to log in. So always test your map by logging out or taking the URL and putting it into a different browser entirely without logging in to see if you can run through everything in it. Also, your pictures have to be in a publicly accessible place in the same way, because without it, you'll be asked to sign in. Hopefully that answered the question, Shane.
Yeah, and one other thing, of course, in our attempt to be brief, we also skipped over a lot of details, but
Right.
This is less of an issue if you're using a public account, because if anything is available publicly, then everything is. But when you're using an organizational account or a subscription, you can make each individual map and even each individual layer public or not public. So I think that this is much more of an issue if you have a subscription, because then you're managing individually if things are public or not. And it's very common, I think Paul's suggestion about logging out first and then trying the map is the no-brainer. You need to do that because you often forget, and it could be one individual layer that you forgot that you didn't make public that then winds up causing problems for the map. Another thing you can do is have two browsers open, have one of them logged in, the other one not. So then you can go ahead and not have to log in and log out to see what things look like as a difference. Go ahead.
I'll just say here, this was made with a public account, the map that you're looking at here and that I've been demoing. And my students have made very simple maps with almost no more training than what you see here. However, if you point to a website who doesn't want their stuff taken or linked to, it will also come up as not public.
Yeah, because their settings also will make a difference.
Correct.
So we have a question. I have made a map package using ArcGIS Desktop. How do I incorporate that into a story map? Despite making it public, it is not an option to view as a web app. That's a good
yeah,
question.
I've had that problem as well. And that's because unless you can display that map package as a map and then save it again as a web map, you probably can't point to it. I think the way I would go about doing that would be to open let's see if I can do this. This is on the fly here, probably not a good idea, but what the heck. So if you came and you opened this map, this map package is going to tell me I have to open in desktop, so that's not going to work because mine was not set up right. But if you were able to open this map package not in desktop, so you're not using ArcGIS Online only for storage, then if you can open it in your map, then save that other map as a web map. And once you save it as a web map, then you can pull it into your app.
Yeah, I think that's a good suggestion. And if you want to follow up with us by email so we can help you troubleshoot, then that's fine. We can give it a shot. I think that there's a lot of times where features change over time, and in the beginning they just had it so that you could store data. All it was really Dropbox and in the beginning, but as they've moved forward, they make it more and more able and have more and more functions. And occasionally you have certain things in your package or in your layers it won't display, but I think anything you can get into a map, you should be able to then display in a web app. I think that that's a good way to look at it, which a story map is an example of a web app. But feel free to reach out to us.
Another workaround is a little more sophisticated. So if you were to go back to story maps and you chose, well, let's go to the journal here because that's what we were looking at. But I've used the side accordion, for example. When you come up here, you have a choice at some point. I'm picking one at random here. There used to be a way to actually download the app itself. And then you can play with the app itself. I'm moving out here to see if I can see where that is. Here, down here, it tells you what some of the components are, and you can come down. That's the wrong thing, sorry. But you were able to take the actual the apps themselves and manipulate them. Most of them are accessible through GitHub. So they're publicly accessible apps that can be configured for your own use. And I think if you do that, then you have a better chance of adding things from desktop.
Yeah, and I will say that most things online, this is not just Esri, it's everything. If you are willing to customize and go behind the scenes and do a little coding, you can get by almost anything. But what we were talking about at first is what you can do just in the browser. And Paul made a good point that yes, most of these, if not all of them, you can download and configure on your own computer, or you can use the version that's online, which just requires you to click on the buttons in the web interface. So definitely if you download and configure them on your computer, which may not be something that's too difficult for you, depending on who you are and what your skill levels are, or what your skill level is, you can get by some of the issues that you may be running into in the online maps. But keep in mind, once you download and configure something on your computer, you're going to be responsible for sort of maintaining that over time and making sure all the updates are there, versus when you do them online, they'll roll out the updates automatically to the ones that are online. So it's a little bit higher level of responsibility, but sometimes it allows you to do what you want to do when the online versions are not cooperating with you.
Yeah, I found the right place here. So they've moved it. It used to be under that gallery links, but it's now under an app link. And so if it says build a map tour, when you follow through with this, it will tell you the little symbols here tell you how many different kinds of things it will be good on mobile phones or whatever it happens to be. Let's see if they put the legend at the bottom here. There you go. Installed on your web browser. It will have an easy builder, etc. And some of these custom things really are doable, even by somebody with minimal coding like me, because they have step-by-step instructions, and it says open the code, change this line, right? And so you don't have to do it from scratch. The base is there. You just insert your own personal thing.
Okay. Anybody else have any other questions? Okay. What I'll do then is I'll just go ahead for this last few minutes here, or last bit, to put up that last resource page, partially because people may want to be looking at these. Again, I will post these, or either send them by email or send by email a link where they're located. And my contact information is down at the bottom of this screen, so if people want to reach out to me directly with any questions that they have, they should feel free. And if it turns out that it's more appropriate that Paul is involved or that I have questions, I'll go ahead and CC her. Or if you search for her name online, you will also find her contact information. Okay. If there are no more questions, thank you everyone for coming. As I said previously, this will be, the recording should be made available in the next day or so, and you will all get a link of that. When it's available, please feel free to share this with people. And this, of course, is just one in a series of webinars that we're having, some of which will cover more of the basics and maybe be a little more hands-on with leading people through. But hopefully this gave you an idea of what you could do with story maps, maybe caused you to think about why you might want to know more. And these are always evolving, and there are new abilities and applications added all the time. It's both interesting, can be a little frustrating, but it certainly has made a very compelling way to share information online that didn't exist even just a year or two ago, really, in the capacity that it does now. So thanks again for attending, and we look forward to seeing you at future webinars.